Well, good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you are watching us from. This is the sixth webinar in our exhibitor webinar series. This is presented by TouchPlan. We have an awesome panel for you today. My name is Eileen Goldberg. I'm with LCI. I will be your moderator this afternoon. And there's a couple of housekeeping items I'd like to go over before we get started. The first is that this webinar is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be available on our Congress website, LCI Congress/2022. When you see a red asterisk to the left of the TouchPlan logo, click on the TouchPlan logo and you will be taken directly to the recording. You'll also notice the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. There's a red arrow to the left of that control panel. This is the minimization and maximization arrow. Please feel free to use that throughout the presentation so you can view the presentation more closely. At the bottom of your control panel, you'll see the questions box. Please put any questions you have in the questions box. They'll be answered at the end of the presentation. Just a quick recap, this is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be available on our Congress site by the end of the week. Once you see a red asterisk to the left of the TouchPlan logo, click on the logo, you'll be taken directly to the video. Minimization and maximization arrow on the control panel, as well as the questions box. Please put any questions you have in the box. They'll be answered at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda and our panel.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our topic today for improving operations, driving profitability, all while mitigating risk, while exploring the ROI of digitizing the planning process. My name is Amanda McKernan. I'll be kind of running the panel today and introducing you shortly to Brian and Paul Studley. Really the topic of today and what we're going to be getting into is we know that there's profit margins for commercial general contractors that average around 4%. So leaving a lot of little wiggle room for unplanned expenses. Effective construction planning helps project teams proactively manage a lot of factors that can impact some of the things you face along the construction front. So in this webinar, you're going to hear from the panel of our industry experts on how they're using construction planning software to improve operations, drive profitability, and mitigate risk without increasing the administrative burden on these project teams. So it's a pleasure to introduce you to Brian Bova and Paul Studley. I've had the opportunity to work with them over the last couple of years, and I'm really excited for you to meet them. So I'll start with you, Brian, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Brian Bova, project manager for Flinco in the Arkansas office. Been working with the digital LPS system, specifically TouchPlan, for the last a little over 2 years. Been with Lean with Flinco for, gosh, just over, I think, 5 or 6 years. So, and been a Lean mentor and been a part of the LCI for a number of years now.
Awesome. And Paul.
That's great. Hi, Paul Studley. I'm a superintendent for Howard S. Wright at Belfer Beatty Company in the Seattle region, Pacific Northwest region. I've been on the Lean journey since 2019 and been working with the electronic platforms like TouchPlan since right around then. It wasn't long after I attended the conference in Fort Worth that we onboarded these platforms and started this efficiency journey.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate it. I think the biggest thing today is we wanted to give the audience a project manager point of view and a superintendent point of view on just the different ways that they can see these ROI savings in a digital platform being TouchPlan. So we can jump right into it. The first factor that we want to jump into is just how are we driving profitability? Some customers say that they've reduced rework by using TouchPlan, which led them to increase profitability on their projects. Paul, I'll start with you, but can you give an example of where TouchPlan has reduced rework on a recent project that you think led to time and cost savings?
Yeah, absolutely. My mind gravitates to one project specifically that, and one case actually that was pretty profound. We, right at the beginning of the project, as we were starting construction, we found out that the electrical plans had been submitted under the wrong code year. And it got all the way through plans review, permit issued, and we were about to start construction. And then it was found out, which put a freeze on all work. That in this jurisdiction, they would not allow any of that work to be put in place until the plans were reviewed again under the current code year. So that equated to a 6-week delay in putting electric work in place and anything associated to that. So what we did is we went to the drawing board. In this case, we went into touch plan with the team, practicing our lean principles, right, and practices of using last planner system with our entire team. Planned through the process. We picked a target 3 months out that we needed to be back on track. We exceeded that. We were back on track and kept our clients' long-term goals intact for the project. So I think it goes without saying. I think most can understand the savings that happen. Yes, there's some overtime and there's some things that happen in the process of recovering that, but long term, you're saving significantly in meeting the client's goals and not extending that.
Right. No, that's awesome. Thank you for that. And Brian, do you want to dig into a little bit about some of the profitability you've seen?
Yeah, one specific thing, just kind of like Paul stated, was we had a project up here in Rogers, Arkansas, that was a competition gym, a baseball field, and a softball field, and we were about 11 weeks out from the project needing to be completed for the school year. And the project team had actually been using a different digital platform for doing all of the last planner systems, all of our phase plans, then touch plan. It wasn't going very well. And with the experience that we had on other projects with touch plan, we ended up actually converting the project with 11 weeks left to touch plan. Actually had a huge phase plan meeting to plan out the last 11 weeks worth of work. Took about a half a day to do so because it was all finishes and everything. And actually brought that project in under budget and within the time frame needed. So, just by moving to a software that was a little easier for us to use, that we knew was tried and true, we were able to get that done. Not saying that the previous one wasn't working for us. It just didn't have the reporting tools that we needed to help, reduce that rework and everything else. Another thing I'll state is our Arkansas office was the first division within Flinco to actually do an enterprise agreement with TouchPlan. And the main reason why we did so, and one of our big selling points to our area VP and our area president, was the amount of actual admin time that we'd save. We calculated it based on a $10 to $15 million project per year. We'd be able to save about 300 hours of not going through and doing analog items such as spreadsheets and everything of that nature, to where we could actually be out on the job site doing that QA QC that really we need to be out there doing, rather than working on a spreadsheet and pulling reports. So rather than all those hours, or maybe 4 hours a week with one of our project engineers making a spreadsheet, couple clicks of a button and we've got the weekly work plan report, we've got PPC report. We also found out by doing our research that it also saved our trade partners about 500 hours a year in savings by moving to a digital platform compared to an analog platform.
That's awesome. I think that's a perfect transition really into the operations and improvement side of things. That, Brian, I'll let you kind of run with this. But in speaking to our customers, we learned that TouchPlan has reduced time spent in construction meetings by close to 50%. I think just alone seeing the 300 hours saved for Flinco, 500 hours for trades in a year. How can you kind of bring that back to an ROI perspective of how that's helped reduce your meeting times?
Yeah, obviously, in today's day and age, everybody doesn't want to be in meetings. We try and make meetings as short as possible because we want to be on the job site doing the work, putting the work in place. Phase plans on the projects I've been a part of have stayed. We started out around 2 to 2.5 hours per phase plan for major milestones. By moving to digital, we've stuck to that 2.5 hours because we think that that's a really good time frame. But the great thing is moving from analog, tasks, sticky notes to a digital or touch plan has made it to where we're not taking a lot of time to create those tasks or those sticky notes. And the time saved there is where we're spending more time talking about the flow of the milestone, talking about the specific, tasks that are going to be going on to make sure we're getting down in depth and everybody's understanding the handoff and transitions within that. We do have a lot of our projects that we're sticking to a 4-hour phase plan, and by moving to that digital platform, they were able to bring down the phase plan to about 2 to 2.5 hours. And so it also helps us in our trade partner meetings when we're talking about schedule, and just pulling up touch plan and being able to update the previous work and then going to the next week's work and promising that and pulling up our weekly work plan. It just saves a tremendous amount of time in our meetings.
Right, without losing all that data. No, that's perfect. Paul, I'll turn over to you. How have you felt that touch plan is going to reduce the meeting times on your projects?
Yeah, I think that Brian queued that up perfectly. There's the significant amount of savings that you find in that phase pull planning part of the last planner system, right? Again, sticking with that platform. I want to focus on the look ahead planning and the savings in that, which, the frequency of that should be around every week, right? We should be having look ahead planning meetings. Specifically, the same project that I spoke about before, it was just under 300,000 square feet of tenant improvement and an 11-story building. Our weekly meeting, look ahead meeting, with using touch plan in conjunction with a virtual meeting space, our meetings would be 1 hour and 11 floors, 280,000 plus square feet. We could get planned through on a weekly basis, efficiently and effectively. That's capturing constraints, risks, right? Logging risks, all those things within 1 hour. How do we do that? We do that by the nature of touch plan being a 24-hour, 7 days a week accessible platform. So we ask our trade partners and everybody involved in that planning process to be prepared. They can go into this platform and they can create all their tickets, have it in their taskbar, ready to go, ready for the planning. I mean, that's the same for phase pull planning. Right? We be prepared for the meeting, and then we just efficiently and effectively go through that meeting, plan all those conversations, which is where all the magic is happening, is still taking place, whether it's in person or in a virtual platform. And in the end, you have the most reliable plan that you could possibly have.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's perfect in a nice transition into just moving away from the manual process and spreadsheets into touch plan. Obviously, before, planning a 3,000 square foot space would probably have taken a lot of extra hours in doing that. What would you kind of say has been the biggest thing from how moving to touch plan has impacted the project in that respect of just fully moving out of the manual process and away from spreadsheets?
Yeah, I would say I would actually tag on to or copy what Brian was saying before, which is that we now don't have to have all the administrative work, the hours and hours and hours of administrative work that goes on after those meetings, plus relying on people's memory of those conversations to go back into a schedule or a spreadsheet, capture all that information, get it back out to the group for review, make revisions, right? There's probably multiple revisions depending on how complex. 300,000 square foot TI is complex. There's going to be multiple reviews that happen in that process. So all that time is saved because we have a reportable plan that's developed by the entire team at the end of that meeting. At the end of that 1 hour meeting, our plan was ready. It was ready to go to the last planners, right? To start putting together their takeoffs and their material and manpower projections.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I know, lastly, on kind of that topic before we jump into the rework portion, but Brian, I think you alone were able to take a lot of the time savings of manual into a digital and use that as a big component as to why the company should go enterprise. So I'm sure that was helpful in that aspect.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest talking point that we pushed during the presentation to our VP and president of the area. When they looked at, obviously the question was, hey, we can save all this amount. We can save this amount of money by, going to a digital. Well, they're like, well, how are we saving that money? And then we talked about, the QA/QC being on site more. And then also just the fact that, there's something to be said on a digital platform compared to analog, whereas you're not, if you, an Excel spreadsheet can always get screwed up in some way, shape, or form, specifically if what we were having to do on larger projects was send those Excel spreadsheets to the trade partners, having them fill out the Excel spreadsheet, send it back to us, and then compiling all those together to at least save a little bit of time. But there's definitely a lot of admin savings by switching to digital.
Yeah, and we've seen that our clients are seeing about a 20% reduction in rework on their projects. So with you saving that admin time, would you say that's around the same time you've been seeing, which kind of improved all that rework along the way?
Yep.
Paul, what about you for as far as the rework goes and on your project?
Yeah, I think that for me, I think this fits into that category of it's like safety, right? Where all the diligence and all the preparation that goes in, you hopefully do not have any returning data that says, right, that you have injuries. You're hopefully avoiding all that. So you don't have that returning data. I think that there's a lot of times that we could point out that, right, we have less return work on drywall work because we avoided pointing out that the electricians had to do some, right, they had an RFI change. All that's happening in these conversations. It's captured in the plan. But overall, I think that if you listen in on one of these meetings, I listen into a lot of meetings in these planning and projects, and you cannot get through 5 minutes in a meeting without hearing something that is of value that is being talked about, something magical in that conversation that is avoiding some rework down the line in production. So I think that it's hard to substantiate, but you can hear it. It's happening constantly.
Right.
Yeah, I think one thing, the way you can tell realistically, going back to Paul, it is hard to figure it out, but I think when you see the flow of the project, and if your project is flowing a lot better than previous projects, I think the bread's in the pudding right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, really the last topic we have before jumping into questions is just the risk mitigation portion, which is obviously so crucial. We've learned that TouchPlan has helped reduce project planning delays close to 50%. How has TouchPlan helped you reduce risk and really identify risks before they happen? Paul, I'll let you start with this one of just when using traditional sticky notes and your findings and how we can jump into that.
Yeah, when you're using the analog, we don't want to discourage the conversation, right? The sticky notes is where we all started from doing this planning, and the magic is in the conversation. But when you're the facilitator of these meetings, it's up to you to interpret all that information into a schedule in that fashion. We're here, and I'm kind of repeating myself. I said this before. In this format, it's all happening at the keystrokes of everybody that's involved. All the stakeholders are involved in the process of developing this plan. And therefore you're eliminating that risk of that interpretation. And I think that's the thing that stands out the most to me in this process.
Perfect. And Brian, what about you for risk mitigation?
Yeah, I'd go back to what I said earlier within the phase plan process. Obviously, like Paul said, analog, we're not discouraging anybody not to use analog. I mean, analog, from what we've seen, just with implementing lean in the analog ways, has drastically helped us with risk mitigation and everything. But we've taken it to a next level with using digital, because we can talk more in our phase plan meetings about the work being put in place and how that's going to happen, rather than kind of not necessarily glossing over the whole situation, but diving deeper into typically what we were doing with analog, because we had to respect our trade partners' time, and then we had to create those those analog sticky notes. So by going to digital, it's just helped us actually expand upon the flow and the work being put in place in those conversations.
Great. I know the last topic of this too is the safety portion. Obviously, safety is the number 1 priority on every construction project. So how has TouchPlan either helped or reduced job site injuries? I know it's not always the easiest thing to track, but how can you assume your job site has stayed safe by using TouchPlan? And Brian, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, it goes back to excuse me, just what I said about talking through the phase plan meetings, more talking about the work that's going to be put in place. And obviously we all know in the construction industry, the more rework you have on a project, the greater risk you have of actually having a safety violation or an injury or accident. So by reducing the rework, by reducing those risks, we've reduced safety. I can't say for certain what percentage that is, but we definitely can tell that on our projects we have seen reductions in safety, and Flintco's #1 priority is always safety with our trade partners and our employees.
Perfect. And lastly, Paul, I know you had mentioned some current examples that you have seen really help with safety. What can you mention to that?
Yeah, I think that again, Brian and I are speaking the same language here. We're right. It's easy to get off track when you're fully focused on production, right? When you're planning, you're trying to create the most efficient and reliable workflow through your project. That's what obviously we have a large amount of our focus on, but safety is critical to that process, and more important to keep things on track. So by inviting our safety, health, and environmental managers into these meetings, we can therefore capture all the moments that they need to be involved. They can hear live those conversations and that should be triggering those thoughts of, okay, hey, I can put a ticket in here, or a milestone that says we need to start planning. When you have critical activities like crane assembly or something of that nature, those activities take a long time to plan before they're ready to actually happen. So those activities can be thrown in to the plan, at the proper moments, and that saves on that reactionary planning that's got to take place, and everybody refocusing on that and taking away from that fluidity of your planning process. So I think that's the one thing that I've seen the most that's happened on our projects, is we've been able to get those conversations in more frequency.
Awesome. And right before we head into questions, Paul, I'll leave this one to you, and then Brian, if there's anything that the audience can kind of take away from today's discussion, what would you want the audience's biggest takeaway to be from this presentation?
Thanks for asking that. I think that, to me, what I would want everybody to take away from this is goes back to kind of my voyage here, my journey in lean. When 2019, when I went to that conference in Fort Worth, I was asked by one of our company's executives what I had hoped to get out of lean, going to the lean conference, and my response was that I had hoped to find a way to reduce my stress by 25%. And that sounds ridiculous, but it was my response. And I can tell you that over the years since then, I can confidently tell you that I've reduced my stress by 50% or better. And it's all due to these life-changing things, right? And again, I don't want to overstate it by saying things like that, but it really truly has actually changed my life because I've reduced my stress that much. I'm therefore a better parent. I'm a better husband, right? Because I have that time not stressed out thinking about work after work. And it really has been all these different ways that I've improved my effectiveness at work.
Yeah, that's really amazing to hear, and kind of the biggest reason why I think we all do what we do. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Brian, what do you want the audience to kind of leave with today?
Well, I'd say, I mean, obviously, anybody who's on this or going to the LCI conference is a firm believer in lean, just like we are. We know that it helps our projects in one way, shape, or form, specifically productivity, and all of that. I would say, looking towards the future and where is lean going, I would say, it's got to be the digital LPS systems. We joked with it when we were presenting to our VP and president of the area that, hey, Flinko has what we know as Lean 2.0. We were saying, hey, with a digital platform, this is basically Lean 3.0. It's like this is the next chapter in what we're going to see Lean become. So I would say if you're hesitant or kind of skeptical on moving to a digital platform, maybe just because, hey, it's digital, who knows what the learning curve is, I'd step in the water. It's a lot easier than you think it's going to be.
Yeah. Well, I personally thank both of you for taking the time to speak to us today. It's really rewarding to have been working with you from the very start and demoing to you and trying to push you to get in the water too. So it's been great to just spend this time with you guys over the years. Before we jump into questions, just as a reminder, our booth will be 207 this year. So come by to say hi. I'm sure Paul and Brian will be hanging out with us quite a bit. So pick their brains even more. But Eileen, I will turn over to you to see if we had any questions.
All right. We did have some people write into the questions box. Evidently, this is a question for Brian. How has moving to an enterprise account made your job easier?
I think that one of the biggest things, and it's not just my job, it's actually Melanie, our main lean person within Flinko, would actually be better at answering this than me, but they can actually go into touch plan in the enterprise system and see every single one of our projects, see the health of the project, see PPC, where we're at compared to, your typical project of the same size, the same type. But from a project standpoint, we get to see all that information too. We get to see which trade partners are always going into touch plan, updating their tickets. You have like little medals for each trade partner on, if somebody's going to get a gold or silver for that week on who's the most who has the most participation. You also have a lot more within that dashboard, and it's hard to describe because there's so much information, and it's such a huge benefit because you can tell again your PPC right off the bat, how many people you have on the job site each and every week. There's just a plethora of knowledge that you don't get just without that enterprise system. So
yeah, and for questions on the dashboard, feel free, like I said, come by the booth. But it definitely is a powerful thing just to show not only how are you tracking along in your lean journey, where are areas for improvement. Obviously, trade buy-ins, one of the biggest things, making sure your trades are staying on base. So that dashboard is the real deal when it comes to just implementing lean. And I think for so many of our enterprise customers has been a crucial driver into seeing the success and the ROI they're getting out of that. So thanks for taking that one, Brian.
Well, we are out of time. LCI would like to thank Amanda, Brian, and Paul for presenting today. It was a fantastic panel discussion. Thank you again, and all of you for attending. Again, if you have any questions for TouchPlan, they will be at booth, you said 207, correct?
207, yes.
At our LCI Congress, which is October 18th through 21st in New Orleans. So we hope to see you there. We hope to see you on our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Guys, take care.